I'm 51 years old and I have no retirement saved.
The retirement age is too high in America.
You know that the American dream was actually just like a big ass PR stunt?
And you want to know the saddest part?
Where people work their whole lives and then can't afford health care.
Fewer than half of Americans could cover 3 months of living expenses if they lost their income. And it's becoming painfully obvious that a comfortable retirement is simply out of reach for the majority of people. Millions are still working in their 70s or going back to work after they retired. And this isn't just a case of bad luck or poor planning. Something much bigger is going on.
An older man says he was forced out of retirement after his wife unexpectedly lost her job.
78-year-old Richard Pulley, delivering DoorDash for Brittany Smith.
We need to help him.
So she launched an online fundraiser, which has raised nearly $1 million over the last 5 days. Pulley says his delivery work has helped pay for monthly bills, including medication for him and his wife.
Of course, not everybody going to get almost $1 million because of the kindness of strangers. Most people are, SOL, which is what they would be if they didn't get that money and they became simply too old to work, which when you're 78 is pretty soon. I believe life expectancy for men is lower than 78. A couple of the comments echo my thoughts. It's sad in this rich country to see this, and this shouldn't happen to seniors who have worked all their lives. Unfortunately, working all of our life and paying into Social Security is simply not enough. And as I'll discuss a little bit later, Social Security payments are not enough as it is now. Things are just going to get worse.
I'm 51 years old and I have no retirement saved. I raised my girls by myself. I worked multiple jobs. I did everything right. I paid the bills, I showed up, I kept the lights on, and every time life happened, a car repair, a medical bill, or a kid who needed something, I pulled from wherever I had set a tiny bit aside because that's what moms do.
Vanguard just found something shocking. In their 2025 retirement outlook, only 42% of millennials, 41% of Gen X, and 40% of boomers are on track for retirement. Now, as bad as that is, believe it or not, the numbers actually get worse.
And everyone says, you got to save, you got to prepare for retirement, you got to do this, and you got to invest, and you got to save 30% of your check. I've been working for 30 years, and I just realized this morning, I don't have any savings. I got nothing. For 30 years, I've been paying bills, raising kids, and for the last 10 or 15 years, paying child support, and at the end of the week, I got nothing left.
Now, this is exactly why people need to plan ahead, put together a proper financial plan. You don't have to pay for a financial planner. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But with the access we have to Google and AI, it's very easy to put together something basic. Of course, he didn't have those tools when he was younger, so it was more difficult. But of course, the cost of living wasn't what it is today. But ultimately, we just have to have a certain percentage withdrawn from our paycheck going right into savings and or an investment account. And if people are starting now, I would say start with whatever you can and work up to something like 20%. But ultimately, like I said before, that financial plan. And look, I know there are a ton of other people in this same situation or something similar. A couple of the commenters are, I worked 47 years, no savings, no nest egg, didn't make that much money over the years. Someone else, yep, me too. But then someone else is looking at the other side of the coin and saying, I will never understand how someone works 30 years and has nothing. And there are a lot of people like that saying, well, people aren't entitled to retirement. And ultimately, Social Security was created to prevent people from living in poverty in old age, to make sure they could survive after they stopped working. Well, like I touched on before, I'm going to get more into Social Security and the whole situation momentarily, but ultimately it's not doing what it was originally intended for. If you're enjoying this video or at least finding it helpful, then make sure to subscribe. After all, it's free.
I noticed this lady working in the dressing room. This woman's got to be in her 80s and she is still working. I thought, why is a 92-year-old woman working? It just seemed unbelievable to me.
Well, I have to. It's the rent and it's the car payment and the car insurance and the telephone, electricity and cable.
So she lives in an RV. It's not like she's got a really nice apartment she's trying to pay for or anything like that. She's 92 and simply has to keep working to keep a roof over her head. I have to read some of the comments. The first one, unfortunately, a lot of us are headed in this direction. I talked about the Vanguard numbers and how it gets worse. I'll get to that in a minute. Not me. Moving to another country when I retire, that's certainly one option. There are a plethora of other countries with a better cost of living. One more, they need to raise the Social Security amount for our retirees. Well, unfortunately, that's not happening. In fact, it's going to be the opposite. I'll touch on that momentarily, but I wanted to talk again about those Vanguard numbers I mentioned and how it gets worse. You see, Vanguard analyzed people who were already saving for retirement, but they didn't include those with very little or no savings. The National Institute on Retirement Security found that across all workers, including those with no savings, the median retirement savings was just $955. And about 50% of workers had no retirement fund at all.
Hey, what's up, America? Is the retirement age too high here in America? So members of our government are now talking about raising the retirement age here in the United States up to 70 years old. Now they're saying that people are living longer, therefore retirement age needs to be pushed down the line a little bit. Now that is ridiculous because the average life expectancy here in America is about 74 to 75 years old.
I touched on Social Security before. It's not enough now. It's almost certainly not going to be enough in the future. In fact, it's projected to run short by 2033. That same projection says it's only going to be able to cover about 77 to 80% of promised benefits. Interesting how they used the word promised. Clearly, that promise was broken. Just like the system. And I mean, that's a system that people count on, maybe count on the most. All the more reason people have to financially educate themselves, work hard, live below your means, as hard as that is, and it's getting harder with the increased cost of living. We just have to do it. There's really no choice. Another great comment from one of you. Young people should learn a trade and be smart with your money. Also, remember the government wants you to be dumb. That's why there aren't finance classes in high school. And it's very evident out there, at least there's not as much financial education as there are commercials enticing us to buy crap that we don't need. As for the learning a trade part, it looks like that's becoming a safer option than going to college and getting a traditional white-collar job.
You know that the American dream was actually just like a big-ass PR stunt? Literally. So let's go all the way back to like the 1920s to the 1950s when the phrase American dream got ever so popular. Yeah, that whole idea? It was manufactured by ad executives and corporate lobbyists, to keep workers compliant. Seriously. During the Great Depression, socialism and labor organization were absolutely exploding. People were striking, protesting, and demanding real wealth redistribution. And let me tell you right now, the rich were panicking. After the World War II boom, the whole narrative became, if you just work hard enough, you too can own a house in the suburbs, baby. And then you'll live happily ever after. And they plastered that everywhere. Ads, newsreels, radio, school books. Which is crazy because since the 1970s, worker productivity has gone up over 60%. But of course, the wages have barely moved. Oh, and the CEO to worker pay ratio? Yeah, in 1965, that number was 20 to 1. Can you guess what it is today? Yeah, now it's over 344 to 1. So yeah, while they tell you to just pull up your bootstraps and get on the road to happiness, those CEOs, they're just over there quietly quadrupling their salaries and, moving your job overseas.
Yeah, well, there was a day when it was enough to work hard, do what you're supposed to do, and you could have a nice house with a nice yard and all of that stuff, the white picket fence. Those days are definitely gone for most people, but even back then, if you did those things, Social Security wasn't going to take care of you. It's getting worse, but it was never meant to provide people with a good retirement. Let's think about everything that she just said about what the messaging was. None of it was about financial literacy, right? Saving for your retirement, how to invest. There's a narrative out there that, the corporations, the government, they want to keep people down so they have compliant workers. I'm not a conspiracy kind of a guy, but it's hard to refute that. Another great comment from one of you: remember to hire a financial advisor who is a fiduciary, because that is the kind who looks out for your best interest and not themselves or their company. So a fiduciary is someone who is legally required to act in your best interest, but that doesn't necessarily solve everything. Some of them can still charge high fees, and I believe even some can sell products. So maybe they are doing what's in your best interest in terms of their options, but maybe they don't have all of the options, like the option to recommend or help you invest in index funds.
For those who do have retirement savings, the median balance is 40 grand, even though most people estimate they need about $1.5 million to retire comfortably. This is an ode to the failed retirement system in the US. It's been hollowed out by the complete elimination of company pensions and the tearing down of union benefits. And this isn't talking about how much you're exploited when you retire. The retirement homes are all owned by private equity firms who have an incentive to not staff them well. Medical care bankrupts people who are retired as their bodies deteriorate.
Yeah, look. People, corporations, they're out for themselves, right? For the most part. Those at the top, there are good people up there, of course, but they simply can't take care of everyone. I mean, if they all got together and said, okay, let's distribute the wealth more evenly, that would solve a lot of problems. Maybe world hunger, but obviously nothing even close to that is going to happen. Another great comment from one of you: I'm Gen X and I just love those people who say you just didn't save, but don't consider that one long-term sick person in your household can throw that ability to save right out the window. And that certainly happens to a lot of people, unforeseen circumstances, but putting together that financial plan can certainly help. It might not look after absolutely everything, but if we don't have one, then the chances are of things going wrong pretty high. So what are we supposed to do? Well, later on, before we wrap up here, I'll get into some tips and tricks, some pointers from some experts. And look, there are no perfect answers, but we have to use all of the information that's out there to the best of our abilities.
I woke up the other day, probably a week or two ago, and just realized I have not prepared for retirement. Even though I work full time, I've worked my whole life. Ever since I've been old enough to know that I can make money for myself, I've always been motivated in that way. But I didn't really have patience for saving for retirement. I always ignored that, and I just always looked at it like it was a long time away. Totally my fault. I should have already been saving, but I didn't. I didn't want to let go of the money.
One of the comments under this video is so great, and it just mirrors pretty much exactly what I was thinking. Let this be a lesson to anyone seeing this in their 20s and 30s who think retirement is far away. Imitate the squirrels who get busy storing nuts for the winter in the summer. They don't wait until the first snowfall. But what about the people who are older and don't have anything saved? What are they supposed to do like her? I think she said she was 53. Well, somebody else comments, I didn't have anything at 50 other than a house that was 75% paid for. I started investing hard in my 401k, and at 68, I can retire. So it is possible, at least in that person's case. But I've showed videos before how when you get to be that age, if you're laid off, you can reasonably expect in your next job to get a 25 to 40% pay cut. So just all the more reason we really have to live below our means, young, old, and everyone in between.
Here's your daily reminder that putting your head down and working your ass off until you're 65 so you can enjoy your, quote, golden years is a lie that was sold to you by the people who want you to keep your head down and work your ass off till you're 65 so they can exploit your labor.
Well, maybe. Ultimately, we need to keep our head down and work hard and save as much of our earnings as we can. Another great comment from one of you, and great name, Cybercop Ninja. I won't read all of it, but the number one thing I tell young people is to start a savings habit of 5 to 10% now, and with compounded growth, they will be a millionaire by their 50s. Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. Yeah, look, it doesn't mean nearly as much these days to be a millionaire. Certainly for young people today, in 30 years, it's not going to be that much. You're probably going to want to be a multi-millionaire to be comfortable, at least have a comfortable retirement. But still, it doesn't take that much money each paycheck. If you just look at it, put it into a compound interest calculator, figure out what it's going to be 20, 30 years. That small amount compounded over time, if you put it into a smart investment. I always say an index fund, a globally diversified index fund, not just something like the S&P 500, but if you look at that over the long term, even just a small amount of money every paycheck can turn out to be a pretty solid retirement fund.
How do we live in a country where people work their whole lives and then can't afford health care? We live in a country where people can work their entire lives and retire and then have to choose between buying groceries and paying for their health care. There was a couple standing at the window, and the lady told them it was going to be $154, and the lady looked at her husband and she's like, we don't have that. And the lady was like, I'm so sorry, we can't see you. We'll have to reschedule. We have to do better.
And that was just their deductible. It sounds like they had insurance and they still could not afford the deductible. That's where a lot of people are at these days. I've been talking about having a comfortable retirement. I mean, people not even able to afford a healthcare appointment. That's more than just, an uncomfortable retirement. But it's a situation for more and more people these days as the cost of living just keeps rising, especially for people who are already on a fixed income. All the more reason to plan when we're younger, plan for that rainy day. I talked before about most people not ready for retirement. General consensus says these days we have to have over $1 million to have a comfortable retirement. Well, if we look at the age group 45 to 54, they only have about 115,000. 55 to 64, about 185, and 65 to 74, 200,000. That's clearly not even in the same ballpark as $1 million. So let's talk about that $115,000 and say for someone who's 50 years old, how long, how easy, how difficult is it going to be to get to that $1 million plus? Like, what do they have to do? How much do they have to save? Now, PWL Capital says that real returns for a globally diversified index fund, that's all equities, so all stocks, but the real returns after inflation they project to only be 3 to 4%. Now, this is a very well-known, well-respected organization saying that. A lot of people out there are like, oh, well, the S&P 500 historically has returned 10%, so that's what we can expect. Well, it hasn't quite been 10%, and that's not taking into account inflation. The theoretical person I'm thinking about here is 50 years old, so let's say they have 20 years. 20 years from now, $1 million is not going to be $1 million. So let's be generous and say 4%, a 4% real return after inflation. How much do they have to save of that $115,000? According to my trusty compound interest calculator here, they are going to have to save more than $2,000, $2,100 to be precise, to break that $1 million after inflation amount in 20 years. And that was at 4% compounded interest. Recall that is generous. PWL was saying, projecting, 3 to 4%. However, I mentioned before, globally diversified index fund of all equities. A lot of people, especially people in their 50s and later, aren't comfortable holding 100% equities. That's all stocks and it's globally diversified, but still their investment fund could be depleted by close to 50% in a serious stock market crash. So people really have to make sure that they are comfortable holding an investment portfolio that carries that much risk. Now, I say risk in terms of, short-term, relatively short-term volatility. Obviously, there are other definitions of risk. One is that people run out of money in retirement. But studies have shown, history has shown that people are their worst enemies when it comes to investing, and they just have poor timing. Like, for instance, seeing their investments dwindle during a stock market crash and then selling because they are selling low.
I am so far past caring about saving money. I just don't care. Like, the world could blow up tomorrow, hopefully. And you want me to stress about a construct? Like, at some point in human history, some guy just made up money and credit cards, and you want me to stress about that? It's not even real. And then every time I'm like, maybe I should lock in, maybe I should stop spending money, something huge happens. Like, today I took my car in, need new tires, $2,000. Who cares? It's not even real money. I don't care. Put it on a credit card. And put the $250 perfume that I want on my credit card too. I don't care.
Well, this kind of attitude is not going to get anyone anywhere good. And she's talking about money as a construct, but then saying that she had to pay $2,000 for tires. So it's clearly not fake. It's just kind of this mentality young people of all ages use to justify overspending and not saving. Very hard to save these days for young people especially, but there's almost always a better way, an alternative. They have to, and we have to help them educate themselves. break away from the construct. The consumerism is also a construct, the same way that she described money, to help them to break away from the consumerism and help them realize that, having things doesn't give you true happiness. And it's tough. A lot of people, young people especially, just there's doesn't seem to be nearly as much patience anymore. A lot of people spending a lot of time on their phones, and they get this immediacy, right? The immediacy, whatever they're looking for, they get it right away, whether it's entertainment or an answer to something. Well, that answer, their questions could be related to investing and how to save and how much should I save. She's spending that much on tires. She could have found cheaper tires. She spent $250 on whatever else it was, makeup. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Then she looks a lot younger than 30, so she'd probably end up with well over $1 million by the time she was retirement age. So this has become a trend that I'm seeing out there in the TikTok world. Young people, old people, kind of everybody in between, saying that I've accepted. I'll never be able to retire. I'll be working up until the day of my funeral, probably using a vacation day for it. And people are getting attention, likes, I guess, from this, but it's this kind of attitude. And look, she's drinking like probably close to a $10 mocha, frappa, whatever that is. If she's getting that every day, that's $10 a day, $300 a month. Throwing that into the compound interest calculator, that's going to be a lot of money 20, 30 years from now. If people spend a little bit less time on their phone looking at kind of like useless stuff and doing things like, watching my videos, of course, but reading a book like The Millionaire Teacher. Like, I talk about sacrificing his stuff. That guy truly sacrificed. That's how he became a millionaire as a teacher. He educated himself in investing, and it was more difficult back then. I don't know if he was like right before the internet, but it was more difficult to invest in index funds back then. So anyway, Millionaire Teacher by Andrew Hallam. Really great book for anyone to check out. And look, if people have this attitude like I'm never going to be able to retire, or money is just a construct, there's no point in saving and investing, then this next guy's situation is a really realistic possibility for their future.
There are forever renters, the ones that have always rented, haven't got a hope in hell now. I never thought at 76 years of age I'd be there with 6 other people under the same roof. I thought I'd have a little roof over my own head and enjoying what years I've got left.
Pensioner Bill Turner is on the brink of homelessness after he was forced out of his home when it was phased out of the National Affordable Rental Scheme in 2023.
At a time in my life where I should just be relaxing, I can't do that.
So this situation was from Australia, and the cost of living crisis, retirement crisis, this is going on in more than just the US. I'm in Canada, and 59% of Canadians say they don't think they will ever be able to retire because of their financial situation. 49% did not or could not set aside any retirement savings in the past year, and 39% say they have no retirement savings at all. If we look at the UK, only 30% of adults say they are currently living comfortably. But that doesn't mean it's because they're saving most of their money for retirement and they're sacrificing, because 53% say they are not saving enough for retirement. What are the actual numbers of people saving for retirement? And if it's enough, it's probably more than 53% are not saving enough, but they just don't realize it because of a lack of financial education. If we circle back to Australia, for a single homeowner there, now that's not even a renter. Obviously, a renter would need to have more money in retirement, but a homeowner, according to Money Smart, needs $630,000. They call it in their super, so in their retirement savings, basically. But actual balances are more like $252,000. So clearly a huge gap, and this retirement crisis is clearly not just a problem in the US.
I don't know about you, but I've seen the term no buy month going around a lot at the moment, and I'm actually about to enter into a no buy January, February and March. I thought I would share with you the rules, my exceptions, and how I'm going to be doing it, as well as documenting the whole process, because last time I did this, it genuinely changed my life. I had always been so bad with money and very much just overspending, buying things that I couldn't really afford. During the no spend month, I really stripped back. I spent a lot of time learning about finances, about investing, about all that kind of good stuff. So the premise is that you just don't buy anything that isn't deemed to be an essential. My essentials would be like my rent, my bills, my car finance, my petrol, and food, like groceries. And in the essentials, I would take out anything that is like a takeaway coffee, etc. January for me is a month where we have a lot of birthdays. January to March, we actually have quite a few birthdays. So I've actually set myself an £150 buffer that is for buying birthday presents, buying, like, you know, if a friend wants to go out for dinner for their birthday or any of that kind of stuff. But I'm going one step further with it this time, and I'm actually setting myself a monthly limit for my grocery shop as well. So we're setting ourselves a limit of £50 a week, and that £50 is to buy all of our food, and we are going to actively use up things that are in the cupboard already, making meals out of them before we buy something new.
Now, this is a trend that I can get behind, and she modified it to kind of suit herself, set aside some money for presents. So, I mean, if you really need to treat yourself, if you need something, you could set aside, you know, budget a little bit of money to, you know, enjoy yourself a little bit. I mean, ultimately, we're living now. Tomorrow's not guaranteed, but if we get to tomorrow, we want to be comfortable there too.
These are my 12 finance rules that everybody needs to learn, and the younger you can learn them, the better. And the first one is, debt is a silent prison. If you get into the wrong kind of debt, credit card debt, student loan debt, car loans, whatever it might be, it is going to be a problem for the long haul, and it is a game that is very hard to get out of. Number 2, always live below your means. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. Don't overspend your budget and try to do your saving and investing first off the top. Number 3, an emergency fund is non-negotiable. So to me, you need a minimum of 3 months. For many people, depending on your risk tolerance, you might want 6 or even 12 months. The next one is invest early, not when you're ready. People always say, I'm going to wait till I'm ready. It sounds like when they're having a baby. We're going to wait till we're financially secure before we have a baby. Well, those days never come. You've got to invest early, even if you start off with small amounts of money, and let compound interest do the rest for you so that you can win in the long term. Number 5, renting peace is better than buying stress, which means, as someone who's been a long-term realtor, don't let other people talk you into buying a house if you're not ready. Don't feel bad if you're renting currently, because it might be the best thing for you.
There is a whole renting versus owning debate, and I was of the mindset for a long time that if you rent, you're throwing your money away. But that's actually not true. For people who are really good savers and investors, renting can often make a lot of sense. But owning our home and having the mortgage paid off in retirement would be ideal, so we don't have to deal with rent and, you know, those rent increases.
Number 7, cars are money pits. Average car loan right now is over $700. Just get something that gets you where you got to go, that you can afford. That isn't going to be a big problem. Number 8, budgeting is freedom. It is not restriction. And I know budgeting for people, it's a word they hate to hear. Call it whatever you want to, but you got to know what's coming in. You got to know what's going out. You got to do your saving and investing. And you need to account for every penny, because if you don't, then you're not going to be able to win at this game of money and finance. Number 9, inflation is a silent thief. If you're not sure how inflation works for you, just know if you leave money in the bank and everything gets inflated, that $100 in the bank becomes worth less and less and less. It buys less and less and less.
He goes on to talk about marriage and then get rich quick schemes, you know, kind of avoid those. Of course, it is possible to get rich quick. It's also just as possible, probably even more likely for people to lose all of their money just as quickly. And then finally, he ends with money does not equal happiness. Kind of ties into the marriage thing that he talked about, just finding someone you're financially compatible with, because that will, trust me, that will help with happiness. I'm lucky enough to have someone like that. But yeah, ultimately, money doesn't equal happiness. There's a lot of very wealthy people out there who are not happy. But what I say is money can equal comfort. At least you're not going to be out on the street in retirement. More comments from you guys, and thank you for all of the comments. You guys leave great comments. And I know there's people out there still asking, how can people save for the future when buying enough groceries is a struggle? Can't save what you don't have. So hopefully what I've presented here can provide some answers for that. And what are we saving for? Well, another comment from one of you: assisted living facilities in America can easily cost $7,000 to $10,000 per month. These are the kinds of things that we have to plan for. We have to plan ahead and start early.
This is the #1 cause for retirees running out of money in retirement. Let's talk about it. No, it's not market crashes or inflation. It's actually long-term care. And you want to know the saddest part? The #1 payer of long-term care in America is Medicaid, meaning you have to spend down your assets, spend down your income until you have virtually nothing before you can get long-term care cover. The average long-term care cost in America is $7,000 a month, and the average stay is 36 months. So if you do the math, that's $252,000 out of your pocket. And you may be sitting there thinking, I'm healthy, I'll never need it. 70% of retirees need some form of long-term care in the future. So why in the world are we not planning for it?
One of the comments under here, husband can never get approved for insurance as he has kidney disease, and assuming he's older, maybe he's younger, but it's always a good idea to get some form of life insurance when we are younger. He talked about different options and the rider for long-term care. That's where the personalized financial advice comes, where people should ideally, meet with a licensed professional themselves. I talked about fiduciaries before, but they shouldn't just take advice. Like, I don't give advice on here. I certainly don't know your situation, and we shouldn't be getting advice just from what we're finding online. Ultimately, ideally, we should be paying a professional for it. But anyway, in terms of insurance, getting it when you're younger, that's also way cheaper. I'm on the other side of 40, getting dangerously close to 50, and I just got set up last year. Fairly expensive. My wife did the same. She got we both got just another life insurance policy, and so I got mine first. And when I saw her number, I was shocked at how low it was compared to mine. She got it just before she turned 40. So it's always a good idea to just get it when you're younger. Like I say, with all my videos, everything that I say is easy for me to say, but I have to say it. I don't know everyone's personal financial situation, but I'm just trying to help and say, what's ideal. And of course, I mean, what's ideal in general, because I don't know everyone's personal financial situation, but it certainly obviously helps if people do their own research ahead of time so they know what questions to ask. They can ask about insurance, and if the advisor can help them with different types of insurance, and should I get a rider for long-term care, and what's optimal. Hopefully they have software so they can put in all the inputs, put in all of your expenses, your income, how much you want in retirement, the kind of life that you want, and then they can help figure out, what makes sense for you.
Retirement tip number 14, pump those retirement accounts while you're working. Pump them during your working years and get the magic of compounding interest going. They call it the 8th wonder of the world, so that when you retire, the snowball is so big that it just rolls down the hill all by itself and you're not adding to it anymore. Compounding interest is making it bigger.
That's it. 8th wonder of the world, compound interest. The sooner we can start, the better. Start now, start today. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions. I do certainly know good sources for, how to invest. That's how I got started on YouTube here anyway. If you haven't subscribed, I put out videos like this on a regular basis. It's free, so you might as well do it. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.